like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive?
Let's do it. Always ready to break down some football.
Awesome. Today we're looking at a game that, on paper, might not seem that exciting, but trust me, it's got some juicy details that reveal a lot about the NFL right now.
Bengals versus Steelers.
You got it. And what makes this game so interesting is the different situations these teams are in. You've got the Bengals fighting like crazy to keep their playoff hopes alive.
Right, and the Steelers already in the playoffs, but trying to snap a 4-game losing streak before things get really serious.
And how this game actually played out, let's just say, not your typical back-and-forth shootout.
Definitely not.
Joe Burrow, oh man. He started off like he was playing Madden on rookie mode. Completed his first 12 passes, touchdown to Jamar Chase on the opening drive. You know, talk about setting the tone.
Absolutely, came out firing.
Yeah.
But then things got, well, a little messy, you could say.
Yeah, a little. The Bengals moved the ball pretty well, racked up the yards, but couldn't consistently find the end zone. They ended up leaning on field goals, which, come playoff time, can be a risky strategy.
Oh, absolutely. Risky and
4 field goals, to be exact.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder, why with Burrow looking so sharp did they struggle so much in the red zone? For those who might not know, that's the area inside the 20-yard line where touchdowns become crucial.
It is a head-scratcher. You'd think with Burrow dealing and Jamar Chase, going for the Triple Crown, leading the league in receptions, yards, and touchdowns, they'd be unstoppable.
Yeah, you'd think.
But for some reason, they just kept stalling out.
Chase did have a decent game, 10 catches, 96 yards, but it wasn't the kind of explosive performance we've come to expect.
Right.
And then, to top it off, T. Higgins goes down with an ankle injury. Oof, that's a tough one, especially if they do squeak into the postseason.
Absolutely a tough one. Higgins is such a key part of their offense.
For sure.
Losing him puts even more pressure on Chase and makes their, already iffy red zone performance even more of a concern.
Definitely a concern. All right, let's switch sides now and talk about the Steelers. Their veteran quarterback, Russell Wilson, he had kind of a rough day at the office. Only 148 passing yards and some, well, let's just say some questionable decisions, especially on that final drive.
Yeah, almost felt like they were playing not to lose rather than playing to win.
Interesting.
Very conservative, which, considering their offensive weapons, is a bit of a surprise.
Yeah. You're right. Even George Pickens, their breakout star, was unusually quiet. Just 1 catch, 0 yards, and a couple of drops. What happened there?
It's weird, right?
Yeah.
Pickens' struggles and then Wilson's inconsistency just really highlight the challenges the Steelers are facing.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, they've got talent, but they haven't figured out how to consistently use it.
Makes sense.
It's almost like they're two different teams. A super dominant defense and an offense that's stuck in, second gear.
Yeah. I see what you mean.
Yeah.
But speaking of their defense, they did manage to keep the game close.
They did.
They were especially tough in the red zone, which, considering the Bengals' struggles in that area, is kind of ironic.
It is, isn't it? The Steelers' defense, that's their bread and butter. They've kept them in games all season.
Sure.
The question is, can they carry the team in the playoffs, especially if their offense keeps sputtering?
That is the question. Okay, let's talk about the playoff picture, because this game had big implications for both teams. The Bengals, for them, it was win or go home.
Yeah.
And even then, they needed some help from other teams.
Yeah, they needed both the Dolphins and Broncos to lose just to sneak into the wild card spot. That's the playoff spot for non-division winners.
Exactly. For those who might not be totally familiar with the NFL playoff format,
Right.
and the Steelers, their playoff seeding, it was hanging in the balance.
It was.
Depending on the outcome of the Chargers-Raiders game, they had a chance of facing their division rivals, the Ravens, in the first round of the playoffs.
Oh, wow.
That would be their 3rd meeting this season.
Talk about a grudge match.
Exactly. Okay, but beyond all the playoff drama, there were some pretty intriguing details in this game that you wouldn't necessarily see just by looking at the box score.
Oh, for sure.
Like, remember how dominant the Bengals were on that opening drive? So they flipped a switch and it was gone.
I know, right?
Almost like the Steelers figured them out, adjusted their defense, and bam, shut them down.
You're right. It shows how crucial those in-game adjustments are. The Steelers' defense, they got punched in the mouth early, but they tightened up and made life difficult for Burrow and the Bengals' offense.
Totally. And then there's Najee Harris, the Steelers' workhorse running back.
Oh, yeah. What about him?
This might have been his last game at home as a Steeler.
Yes. his contract situation.
Exactly.
Definitely something to keep an eye on. He actually had a pretty decent game, added another touchdown to his collection against the Bengals.
Yeah, he seems to like playing against them.
He does, doesn't he?
But there's a chance he might have gotten injured late in the game, which, if it's serious, would be a huge blow for the Steelers.
Oh, no, really?
Yeah, and with his future, with the team up in the air.
Adds another layer of intrigue to this matchup, doesn't it?
It does. It really does.
It really does. It makes you think, Even in a team sport, individual players and their contract situations can really shake things up.
Yeah, for sure. Especially when it's a key player like Najee Harris.
Absolutely.
But going back to the game itself, one thing that stood out was just how many field goals the Bengals kicked. 4?
I know.
It was like they were playing for field position instead of, actually trying to score touchdowns.
Yeah, it does make you wonder if they've become a little too reliant on those field goals. I mean, a field goal is better than nothing, obviously.
Of course.
But in a league where every point matters, especially come playoff time, settling for 3 points instead of 7, it can come back to bite you.
Oh, yeah. Big time. Especially in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Think about going up against a team like the Chiefs or the Bills.
Oh, man.
Teams that could put up points like crazy. You can't leave points on the field against those offensive powerhouses.
Nope. No way. The Bengals' red zone woes, it's a real weakness. This game just highlighted that.
Yeah, it did.
They moved the ball well between the 20s, but once they got close to the end zone, it was like they lost their mojo.
Totally. It's like they hit a wall, and it makes you think, is it a coaching thing? Play calling? Maybe even the players just not executing?
It's probably a mix of all of that, to be honest. But they need to figure it out, and fast, if they want to make any noise in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Because every possession, every yard, every single point counts once you get to that point.
Absolutely. Now, the Steelers, they've got the opposite problem. Defense is amazing, but the offense, it's like a car sputtering on fumes.
Yeah, it's such a classic example of a team with a super strong identity on one side of the ball, but then struggling to find any consistency on the other. And it brings up an interesting question. Can a team actually win a Super Bowl in today's NFL with a crazy good defense and just an average offense?
It's a good question. Historically, defense has always been a huge part of championship teams.
Right.
But the league's become so pass-happy, so focused on offense.
It has.
It's hard to imagine a team winning it all without a seriously strong offense.
Yeah. Look at all the recent Super Bowl winners. They've all had quarterbacks who can sling it and receivers who can make huge plays.
Exactly.
The Steelers, with their current offensive struggles, they don't really fit that mold.
They don't. They're a tough team to figure out. And this Bengals game, it perfectly shows that. They won. But it wasn't pretty. And it left a lot of questions unanswered.
Totally. And that's what makes them so interesting.
I know, right?
You're trying to figure out who they are, what their potential is. Can they actually be a serious contender with their offense the way it is? Or are they just destined to be, good but not great?
Yeah. It's like a puzzle we're trying to solve.
Yeah.
And each game gives us another piece. Speaking of puzzles, let's try to figure out what happened on that final drive. The Steelers, down by 6, had a real shot at pulling off a win.
Right.
But then
Wilson makes this decision that left everyone scratching their heads.
Yeah.
He had George Pickens wide open, downfield.
Oh, yeah.
Potentially a game-winning touchdown, but he just overthrew him by a mile.
I was watching that live and I was like, what just happened? Such a weird moment.
It just goes to show you, even experienced quarterbacks like Wilson, under pressure, they can make mistakes.
They're human.
And in a close game, those mistakes, they can be the difference between a win and a loss.
Totally. It's those tiny moments, those split-second decisions that can change everything in the NFL. And this game was full of them.
It was.
From the Bengals missing those opportunities in the red zone, to the Steelers' conservative play calling, to that Wilson overthrow. It was a game decided by a bunch of little but super important moments.
Absolutely. And that's what keeps you hooked, right? The unpredictability, the drama, knowing that on any given Sunday, anything can happen.
Exactly.
That's what we love about the NFL. It's a sport where even a game that seems, kind of ordinary, like this Bengals-Steelers matchup, can reveal so much about the teams, the players, and the league itself.
It really is. It's like peeling back layers of an onion. The more you look, the more you discover.
And sometimes, what you find is more questions than answers.
It's funny, a game that at first seemed like pretty straightforward has sparked so much debate and analysis.
I know, right? This Bengals-Steelers game really got people thinking.
It did. It really shows how deep and complex the NFL is.
Yeah.
You can break down one game and find these threads that connect to, like, bigger trends across the whole league.
Totally. It's like this little microcosm of the NFL universe.
Exactly. And with the playoffs just around the corner, this game brings up some big questions. For me, it keeps coming back to the Bengals and their red zone struggles.
Yeah.
Can they really, be considered Super Bowl contenders if they can't consistently score touchdowns?
It's a valid concern. Their red zone efficiency, or should I say lack thereof, has been a problem all season. I mean, they've got the players to score points against anyone, but when the field gets smaller and the pressure's on, they seem to choke.
Yeah. It's almost like they get stage fright once they cross that 20-yard line.
Yeah.
You can't have those mental lapses in the playoffs.
No way. Especially against the top dogs, the teams that are used to winning championships.
Right.
You got to make the most of every scoring chance you get when you're going up against the Chiefs, the Bills, the Eagles. Field goals just won't cut it against those offensive powerhouses.
No, he won't. And then you have the Steelers, this team that just seems to defy logic.
They do, don't they?
Their defense is a monster, but their offense, well...
Let's just say it needs work.
Exactly. It begs the question, can a team built on an amazing defense, but a shaky offense, actually win a Super Bowl in today's NFL? It's a real head-scratcher.
It is. It goes against everything we've seen lately. I mean, look at the teams that have won the Super Bowl in the past few years. They all had those quarterbacks who could make any throw and receivers who could just, dominate the field. The Steelers, they don't really fit that mold.
They don't. Their success depends on something totally different.
It does.
Stifling defense,
Yeah.
a strong run game, and just enough offense to, keep them in games. It's like a throwback style.
Right.
Really gritty.
Totally. They're swimming upstream in a league that's obsessed with, scoring 1 million points. But maybe that's their advantage, Maybe that old school mentality will take other teams by surprise.
It could. They've shown they can win tough, ugly games. And in the playoffs, sometimes that's all you need.
Yeah.
So to wrap things up, let's leave our listeners with something to think about. This Bengals-Steelers game, maybe it wasn't a classic in terms of amazing plays,
Right.
but it was a great example of strategy and the different styles that make the NFL so interesting.
Definitely. It really showed how the league is changing, the whole debate between offense and defense, and those unpredictable moments that keep us all coming back for more.
Absolutely. It reminds us that every game, every matchup can surprise us, challenge what we think we know, and help us understand this crazy, exciting sport even better.
Exactly. That's why we love the NFL. It's like this endless puzzle full of stories and surprises.
Keeps us guessing. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, everyone. We'll be back next time to explore another part of the amazing NFL universe.
Sound the alarm. I'm coming up. We'll have a ball. I'm sweet like a buttercup. You're Bobby doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.